because the noon meal we all know is dinner. The evening meal is supper, and lunch is something you take on a picnic. I am not the MC for this set. Tom Taylor is, and he'll be up here directly, but I am here because this is sort of a carryover from yesterday. Those of you who were here yesterday for the Rising Star concert may remember that Jamie Ferguson was en route to get here to take her place on this stage as the Rising Star from the Aggieland Guild in College Station, where she is a student, a senior student at Texas A&M University. She's the president of the Guild and has her story. She got here at 6 after, that's when we'd all gone to supper, you may recall. And not only did we not want her to miss her opportunity to tell, but we didn't want to miss our opportunity to hear her tell. So we've invited her to lead off this afternoon concert with her story and to recognize her as the rising star she is. She's chosen a family story to tell us. She's passing on stories. That's one of the wonderful things we do as storytellers. So I'm going to let her explain her story and tell her story. But I ask you to please welcome Jamie Ferguson.
Thank you. I'm so thankful and blessed to be here to share this story with you this afternoon. I come from a family of storytellers, actually. My great-grandfather, he used to sit outside under one of the trees at his house and tell stories for hours, and there are more stories about him telling stories than I even think he told stories. And then there's my grandfather, who told me many stories. I spent many an afternoon sitting in my grandparents' foyer, begging my grandfather, just one more story, Granddaddy. And he told me many, but this is the one that sticks in my mind the most. And so this story is dedicated to him. And so it begins. My grandfather grew up in the small Texas town that I call home of Centerville. It's only about 903 people, and he grew up in a time when they didn't have computers or any sort of electronics to find their fun as children. They had to go out and actually make their own fun, and they had to roam the countrysides and figure out their own games. So there were many intriguing places around Centerville that they liked to visit, but one place that they felt was the most intriguing was a 100-year-old house that sat on a hill outside of town. They thought it was interesting for two reasons. One, you could sit on the porch and you could dangle your feet off and you could look out over the entire town. And the second reason is the well. The well sat about 20 feet off of the house. And it wasn't so much that it was a well, it was an average well. But it was the legend behind the well that intrigued the boys the most. Supposedly, during the Civil War, a Confederate soldier had been thrown into the well to his death. That story in itself kept my grandfather and his group of friends anxious on many a silent day. And so time went on, and they would often hang out there, and then a new boy came to town. Well, you see, my grandfather and his group of friends, they had sort of a club going, and so they weren't going to just let anyone in. So they decided we must have an initiation. But what could they possibly do to initiate this boy? The well. You see, not only did it have an intriguing story, but the boys had discovered something interesting about the well. There was a pipe that ran out of the well to keep it from overflowing during heavy rains. And they happened to discover one day that if you yelled into that pipe, it sounded as though a voice were coming from the well. The well. And so one of the boys in the group said, I have it. We are going to designate a boy. And he is going to go to the end of that pipe, and he's going to yell the most agonizing moan that he possibly can. And at that exact moment, we will have the new boy standing over the edge. And so they designated the day, and they designated the exact time that this would happen. And so the day came. They sent the boy on ahead. They all made sure that their clocks were set. They sent him on. They got the new boy. And all along the way, they made sure to emphasize in agonizing detail this legend that they had heard. So by the time they reached there, the boy was fairly anxious already. And so they told him, go all the way to the edge of the well. Lean over as far as you can and listen. Well, hesitantly, the boy walked to the well. He leaned over and he listened, and they waited, and they waited. And soon there was an agonizing moan that arose out of that well, and before you could bat an eye, that boy had already made his way all the way back into town. And those boys were rolling out laughing because there was sweet success that day. And while they were laughing, the boy they had designated to run off and be the ghost or the voice in the well came running up, out of breath, apologizing. I am so sorry, guys. I messed up so bad. And they were like, what are you talking about? It went off perfectly. It scared him to death. The boy was confused. He said, you don't get it. I never made it on time. I got a thorn in my foot about halfway there, and it was so agonizing and excruciating, I had to stop to get it out. And by the time I looked at my watch, it had already been past time. I missed it, so I just ran straight here because I assumed you guys would just be mad and sitting here doing nothing. They all looked at each other in utter disbelief. There was a voice that came out of that well, and if it wasn't him... Well, needless to say, they all gathered together pretty quickly, and they made their way back to town. And from then on, they were ever more anxious about that house and felt it was not a joking matter anymore. Now, you can decide for yourself, perhaps what might have happened. But all I know is my grandfather was the designated ghost that day. And as far as the truth goes, well, he's still not talking.